Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. As Sean mentioned, I'm joined with Dave Rice, and we've got some really exciting stuff to show today. If you go to usa.canon.com, at the very top, you're going to see a search bar, and all you need to do is type in the model that you're looking for. So we're going to search for the Pro 2100. And when it brings up your printer, you'll just click on your model. From there, you will just scroll down. So a little bit of scrolling here. Scroll, come on, come on. Does not play well with others today. Let's see. There we go. You're going to scroll down until you see software and drivers. When I click on software and drivers, it's going to bring me to a point where I get to tell it which software or operating system I'm using. Most of the time, especially with PCs, with Windows, it's actually going to detect it. With Macs, it will detect that it's a Mac, but it's going to require me to go over and click on the one that I'm using. So I'm going to click on Monterey. And from there, you'll see all the various software options that you would just click on to download. And if you don't see the one you're looking for, you can hit load more and it will actually add the rest there. So it's literally that easy to actually just click and download your software and then just follow the install wizard on your back side of things to make sure that everything's following through. We do recommend checking, pretty regularly just to make sure that you're running the latest versions of all of our software. We do routinely update all of our software to make sure bugs are fixed or add new features and things like that. And we'll be talking about some of those new features today. So from there, I am going to introduce Media Configuration Tool. This is an extremely powerful piece of software. It gives you really the ultimate control of your printing experience down to the media level. And there's really nobody that knows more about this than Dave Rice. He is kind of the king of creating AM1X files. So he's going to explain to you what an AM1X file is and what an ICC and all those good fun things are. So with that, I'm going to hand control over to Mr. David Rice again.
So one of the things I actually want to do real quick, since I've got you guys on the line, I'm going to go to LexJet's website. And if you come here to support, you've got ICC profiles. All right, and you go to your Canon printers. I don't know why you got those other ones listed there, but I guess you just kidding. So if we go to, like, for example, Pro Series, I'm going to go to the Pro 2100, 6100, and then you go to Media Profiles. And I'm going to grab something for like a photographic paper, photo paper. As you can see, they've got a bunch of papers here. So like, for example, the Sunset Metallic, if you click on that, that's an AM1X file that I've just downloaded. What's really great about what LexJet does for you is this one AM1X file includes the ICC profile. So I'm going to walk you through the process to how to install that on my 6100 since I've downloaded that media right here. I'll just go to my downloads folder. And go to my downloads. There's that media configuration tool file. So when I double click that file, it's going to automatically launch Canon Media Configuration Tool. What I love Canon has recently done is we now offer a version of Canon Media Configuration Tool that 2100, yeah, okay, so I go out and find my printer. It'll go out and actually search for the printer now. So it automatically pops up with all the printers I have here. So you can see all the printers I've got locally. For you, for the first time, you'll just basically do a search. And it should have came up with this the first time. So I'm a little surprised it didn't do that. So unless I downloaded the wrong version of the M1X file. So now it'll actually go out and search and find all the printers. And what you're seeing here is the MAC address as well as the IP address. So I'm going to click on my Pro 6100 and say OK. And once I've done that, it'll actually go out and communicate with the printer. So what's happening right now is it's communicating with the printer. For folks that are doing it for the first time, it will also ask you, would you like to find the latest media information file from Canon? And so what that's happening in that process it's going out and finding the master file for your printer. So if there's any updates available for your printer, it's going to let you know that Canon has made a change to the media type. And I guarantee you, anybody that has a Canon image prograph printer currently today, you've got some updates that are available for you. There's been a lot of updates that have happened recently. So that being said, now what I can do is I can click on the first button, which is Add Media. And so now it'll actually go out and communicate with the printer and see all the medias that are currently loaded on that printer. And so at this point, this process is kind of communicating with the printer. And I can see right now, it knows I've got that master file. And I don't have every media loaded on my printer. So right now I've got 92 medias out of 128 that can be loaded on my printer. I can kind of go down through here. If there's any updates that need to be available, there's nothing that looks like it needs to be updated. There's a lot of medias I don't have on here that I can save or I can add if I want to. In this case, I want to import. And so this is where I'll go out to my downloads and find that file. So this is that LexJet Sunset photometallic paper. And so I'll say open. And that'll communicate and it'll see this. So that's normally, which a little bit unusual, when I double click that file, it would just bring up this screen. And so I can click here and I can go ahead and say next and add that paper. I don't want to add it right now just because that process takes a little bit of time. And so I'm not going to add that paper. I'm going to walk you through the steps on how you can kind of create and see what LexJet does, because I've got a few LexJet medias on here. I usually have almost all the medias, but at this time, I've just got a few of them. I take them on and off. I've got all of them saved. So for example, here's this is a LexJet one I actually did. I'll go to a LexJet, their print and stick, which is one of my favorite medias they have. So the LexJet print and stick, if I want to see the information about that, I can click here and it tells you everything about that. Actually, yeah, so the name on the control panel is LJ print and stick. The name in your print driver can be a little bit longer. So they call it LexJet print and stick. All right, so when you take a look at the base paper, they use Fine Art Photo for that base paper. And what's nice here is I can actually see all the information about that, their ink usage. They use medium small for the ink usage. You know, I can set my feed tension, my printing feed tension, also the roll tension. I can see what version of black ink they're using, which is matte black. So I can see all the details. They even have the outer diameter of the core set. And one of the things that when we first started doing this, I didn't really pay attention to core size. I knew one was 2-inch core, one was 3-inch core. So for example, a LexJet's satin cloth media. It's a 2-inch core media, but the thickness of that core is I mean, it is probably more than 10 times thicker than any core that exists for that satin cloth. I think partly due to this a cloth material. So when you're loading medias in our new Pro series and our new GP series, specifically the GP 2000, 4000, and the Pro 2100, 6100, and 4100 printers, our printer automatically detects the paper width, the paper length, and the paper thickness. So it can automatically detect this is a LexJet satin cloth. So as you can see, LexJet has built an ICC profile specific to this media. So it's Pro _21 41 6100 LJ print and stick.icm. So that you know that they've perfectly set this media up to run on your printer. So that being said, if I wanted to edit that, so this is if I was creating a media, I'm just going to go to the edit mode. The button right next is if I was creating this media. So in this case, I can see all the tabs that are available to me. So the first tab is what we call a paper feed adjustment. This is really important. It helps to dial that paper in. It looks at how that paper is feeding off the roll. It does kind of an image quality adjustment for the running of that paper. This is something you can also activate right from the control panel if you have like a third-party media and you select, let's say Canon satin photo. It's a satin photo type paper. By activating that from the control panel, it's a great way to help make sure you're not going to get any banding or feed problems with that media. Under the advanced settings, this is where it gets fun. You can set your drying time. You can set the type of cutting. This is what Pete kind of talked about. I can set it up for eject cut. Eject cut is nothing more than the paper hangs there. The control panel changed to cut media. It hangs there until you push that button on the control panel and say cut this media. A lot of professional photographers do like that feature because they'll put their white gloves on. They don't want that print to be damaged in any way, so they'll put their gloves on, let that paper hang, push the cut button, walk up, grab it, and and set it lightly down on a table, so this way they can finish it. The user cut is exactly how it sounds. It will do a dotted line, and you'll go ahead and cut that. And I know Pete kind of talked to this. So what's interesting here is we can set 2-inch core, 3-inch core, which everybody uses. Both are supported, but then I can actually go in and set the millimeters of the outer diameter of that core. That's important because we can do from 50 to 120 millimeters. Like an average core size is about 82 millimeters, is pretty close to the average normal thickness. I came across an Epson media that was like 93 or 94 millimeters outer diameter of the core. So it can vary pretty greatly. I've seen some that are over 100 millimeters. So Canon really put this out. I've never seen anything at the 120, but that's been a nice feature. We can also go in and set the paper length, right? The world uses metrics, so we have to stay within the metrics realm. So, I just say, hey, Siri, 100 feet equals 1 meters, and it'll immediately tell me. In fact, it's coming up right now on my phone. I should have not done that. It'll automatically know it's 30 meters, right? So it's really easy to do. What's one of the most important things is setting up your paper thickness. So this is what helps the head height determine how high and how low it needs to rise. So in here I can do millimeters, so I can actually mic it out with those little calipers and see how many millimeters it is. The other options is, LexJet does a really great job of saying what's the mil thickness. So in this case, this is basically a 6 mil media that they've got this set up as, or I can set it up as any mil thickness right here. So, and that's where I can kind of change that. So what's nice is we can go all the way up to a 31.5 mil thick media through these printers. So a canvas will be anywhere from 18 to 24 mil thick media on those printers. Make sense? This is where you get into the most important stuff. So if you take a look right here for ink usage, they we can set up for medium small. I can go to standard. I can go to small. The Canon base media, that's whatever we set up for that fine art media. I can also go to the largest amount of ink, and I can actually do kind of a test print. That test print is really pretty nice, and I should, for interest of time, I'm not going to show you the test print that it does, but there's a test print that Canon does that is really nice. You can also, when you go to the test printing, you can actually select your own test print file if you want to for that test print. I really like Canon's because it does knockout text. It also has like yellows and browns and reds that are right butt up to each other, or solid colors, so you see if there's any bleed into the next color or feathering. The other thing you can do is you can actually change your head height. I rarely change the head height. The only media that I ever did where I had to change the head height was wrapping paper. Wrapping paper is as thin as plain paper, right? It's extremely thin, but guess what? You're putting lots of ink down on it. And we've all put lots of ink down on plain paper one time, and you see it gets a little bit wavy. So what's important there is with that, I set my head height to kind of standard, where normally would be like low or medium low for plain paper, because it is so thin when you set it to auto. But raising it to standard, it didn't hurt my quality at all, but it raised that head up, whereas it's coming across, as that paper got wavy, I didn't get any strikes onto the media. The other thing I did was I set my vacuum strength. Normally, if we're a plain paper, we can just leave it to auto. It doesn't require a lot of vacuum strength, but I went to strong for my vacuum strength to help pull that paper down, because I'm putting so much ink on that media. So in this case, I set that for standard, and I can set those automatically. And what's really great is, LexJet has a lot of high-grade medias, and some of those medias you can actually set up to do color calibration with, and we can kind of create a calibration target. And again, it has to be a high-grade media. You have to select a media that would be select a media that would be of similar quality to the media. Like, so for example, Pro Luster is one of ours, or Satin Photo. So LexJet has many Satin Photo, well, a few Satin Photo papers. So you could actually use their Satin Photo and kind of create this calibration target. Here's what I'll recommend for folks that want to kind of do a unique calibration target. I recommend that when you buy the printer, you use a Canon media to calibrate that machine from the factory. Once you've done that color calibration, you've got that machine to the factory spec. Then I would load the LexJet Satin Photo media and then create that calibration target, because we know that machine is at the base setting. We also know that printer is perfectly calibrated, and it understands the white point of that Canon media. Now what it's going to do, it's going to create this target. And what's really great about doing this process is it's actually going to do a paper feed adjustment before it actually creates that calibration target. So it's going to look at the white point of that media. It's going to set down, certain color swatches that it's going to go ahead and read with the internal multi-sensor, and then you'll be able to use that media to do color calibration with. So LexJet does a lot of this work for you. They're true experts at this. So please keep that in mind, and that's one of the main reasons why it's really great to do business with LexJet, because they do this work for you. And the last thing you can do is, after I've done all this work, I save this out, right? Then I will print out the color targets. I will go back into Media Configuration Tool, and then that's where LexJet adds that ICC profile to this. So, they'll basically create that ICC, and then they'll add it for you. And the nice part for you, right, once you've added this media, I'm going to exit that. I'm not going to cancel. Yes, I just want to cancel. For you, right, what is really nice is you don't have to go in and worry about selecting ICC profiles, because it will put it in the correct folder. What you have to do, though, and it's a little bit different with Mac than PC, but it's pretty much the same, and I can show you both. If you go here to your settings, and it will ask you if you want to do this update, and so it'll take you to the correct spot. So if I were to go to like my Pro 6100, and I go to my printer properties, there's the device tab, and I just say update media information and say start, and it'll go out and talk to the printer. Right now all my media is up to date, but if you've added a media, it would say there's new media available, and that will pull that ICC profile and all that media information into your driver. So for example, if I go to my printing preferences, and then I come here to my media types, for some reason this is great, because I just tried to do an update. If I were to go to my printing preferences, that's odd. So let me select a different printer, because I was up in Media Configuration Tool. That looks like my GP4000. I go to my printing preferences, if I come down here to my custom medias, you can see, like, for example, LexJet production, East Satin, it automatically, I can go ahead and select that right there. It'll show up in my driver. And these will all show up in your customs right here, like Canon wrapping paper right there. Their LexJet Fire Opal. This is a really beautiful canvas, white canvas. Their water resistant satin cloth. That's one of my favorite medias that they have. So, their sunset metallic. So these will all show up right here. Make sense? So it really makes it easy for you. On the Mac side, it's just under, I think, your utilities within the, and you go to the utilities folder and you just say update media. And that's what brings all those right down to your printer. And the last thing I'm going to show you here is if, for example, I'll go and find a different printer. I'm going to grab the GP4000. When creating, like with the Pro Series and the GPs, is exactly the same. The only difference is with like a GP4000, I'll go ahead and connect to that printer. Give me 1 second. This does take a second or so. Is the GP4000, the GP series, has fluorescent ink. So you have that fluorescent pink ink, but you can turn it off. So that's why we call it a 10 color plus fluorescent. So when LexJet builds ICC profiles, like we just showed you, go ahead and grab like the LexJet Sunset Production E-Satin, really beautiful media. When I go to the editing of that, you'll see here in just a second, once I go to edit that media, I'm not going to really change it, but just so you can kind of see it here in a second. And as you can see, I do a lot of this stuff even for like our Canon medias, right? Just because, building really nice custom ICC profiles for those medias is kind of a nice thing to do. Give me 1 second here. And we come here to under our advanced settings, you actually upload 2 ICC profiles, one with fluorescent and one with fluorescent ink turned off. So the color gamut is different when using fluorescent inks versus non-fluorescent. So that would be the only change. Everything else is the same. The only other thing I will mention here is in this section under advanced, if I go to paper details, one of the things we can do is, we can do full bleed printing, and this is new. This is brand new. The leading edge cut length, we can set that leading edge cut length. Some medias are a little bit heavier or more tacky on the backside, so it doesn't want to fall away. So you can actually set how much paper is wasted, anywhere from 10 millimeters all the way up to 999 millimeters of paper that's wasted between each one for your printing. So that's kind of a bit of an experiment, a little bit. The nice part is LexJet has done so much of the creating of this. They just can kind of look at the media and determine it right away. So and Canon does give you, when you select the base media, what the best setting is that they recommend as a default, and then you can make some changes from there. So, all right. And then we just go ahead and make those changes and do that update, and we're ready to go. So that is really the main difference. And really, when you're creating from the very beginning, all you're really doing is saying, hey, I've got a LexJet, E-Satin photo paper, and I want to set that up. So I can kind of come here to my photo papers, and in that case, I would select a Canon Satin Photo 240, which is very close. It's something you can later create a color calibration target for, because it's a high-grade media. And I would just simply say next. And this is where I would set my control panel, and I would set what's in my driver. So in this case, I would say, what's nice is, LexJet puts, oops, I got to go back. Sorry. They would set LJ, and I have my caps lock on, LJ Satin. They call it E-Satin, but I'm just going to call it Satin Photo. If I could just type right. paper. And then I'm going to add, I'm going to say 290 GSM. And then down here, what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste this and say Control V. Because I can put a longer description in here, I always add the full name, LexJet, and say next. Now it says too long, so now I can see that the 290 GSM had to fall off, or I could just put 290 here instead of paper. So that's where you can kind of set some of this stuff up to be the descriptions you want. If I say next, still too long, right? So I would just maybe call it 290. Make sense? And then you would see all those settings I just showed you and start creating from there. The nice part is you can always see what the ICC profiles are just within this software. Is clicking that, and you can see it all right there. In this case, this was a medium high, ink limiting. It really all comes down to the type of media you're using. That was a clear film set up for screen printing as a custom media. So I hope that helps a little bit.
It does, Dave. Thank you.
Any questions?
One quick one, or we'll see if it's quick. Can you kind of maybe explain the difference between ICC profiles and media types?
Yeah.
And how they're used, and really what the media type being for the base formulas or the base for the paper, and how it's going to lay down ink as opposed to how it handles color.
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I think this is a call for a lot of confusion for people. So, to me, the greatest strength of Canon large format printers is media configuration tool, and what LexJet does for their customers. So different papers can hold more ink or less ink. Setting the thickness and how high to keep that print head away from the media so it doesn't scuff, doesn't scratch. If you're too high, your ink sprays. You'll have fuzzy lines, right? You'll have fuzzy prints. So LexJet takes the time to go in and set that paper up to run perfectly on the printer using all the things I just showed you with the media configuration tool. Once they've done that, they do kind of those image quality tests, and they get loops out, they look in real detail to make sure everything looks fantastic. And they have some great test sheets that they use, and you'll see some of those here in a second. And that once they've set that up, they know that media is running perfectly now in that printer. Now they'll go in when they go to print their sheets for doing the ICC profiling. ICC profiling, what that really is nothing more than a bunch of color swatches, and they'll do a couple thousand color swatches. And when they're doing those color swatches, it's basically we have a spectrophotometer that reads here's how well this media prints with all of these colors, and they use the same color swatches for all the different medias, right? And this is, they use X-Rite, and they use some others, but they're predominantly use X-Rite. I use X-Rite spectrums to do that. And that basically figures out what is the true color gamut on that media for that paper. And then they take that ICC profile they've created and go back into media configuration tool and then add that specifically to that AM1X file. So when you're exporting in installing this media on your printer, LexJet has taken that time to set that media up perfectly, then create an ICC profile. So now for you as the end user, you know that all the parameters to make that media run perfectly, length, all the things that they can do are perfectly set up. They've set how long it is, how thick it is, what is the outer diameter of that core, all those really important things. They've done that work, right? And then they create an ICC profile for it. So the ICC profile is nothing more than, if you could imagine, the fingerprint is how large, how much color can we put down? And you can't really determine that properly unless you figure out how much ink that paper can hold, because LexJet satin photo paper may be able to hold medium high ink versus ours is only standard ink, just it's got a better coating than a Canon photo paper. I don't know that to be true. I'm just talking in theory, right? So to just use the Canon only, the coating may, I encourage you sometime is actually, take 4 papers that you use on a regular basis, set them all down on the table, and you'll see every one of those papers are completely different color white. And that white point is a color. So when you're adding ink to that, you can have some color variations. And some can, again, certain coatings can hold more ink than others. A plain paper is very limited in how much you can't put, really much above standard amount of ink down on that paper, or it starts to spread and it goes into the other colors, and it's just not going to give you very good quality. So I hope that answers the question in a very long-winded way.
Yeah, Dave, I always like to liken your answer to baking a cake, and the ICC profile is just the recipe portion where you're taking all the ingredients and what ingredients do you mix to get the perfect taste of the cake? What ingredients, inks do you use to get the perfect gamut of what that paper can handle? Then the custom media setting is, all right, what pan do you use? What setting do you put the oven on? How long do you leave it in? It's all these other things. So the two things together are what make the perfect print. Separately, they're both important, but together they end up making the perfect cake, So yeah, it's, to use another analogy for you.
Yeah, and some people will create ICC profiles for you, right? They'll say, hey, I'll create a profile so your printer prints perfectly. And they'll just select a Canon media that's like it, and then they'll create an ICC profile. Well, that Canon media may be only 2-inch core. So like my 170 and 200 GSM is a 2-inch core. Well, you've got a timing difference of how that's coming off there versus the LexJet I know is a 3-inch core media, which, I wish we only use 3-inch core medias for a lot of our medias. So you have a timing difference. So there are things that can affect image quality. So, that paper feed, they do all that work for you. So they make sure their medias are perfectly set up and they've got great ICC. So, that's really, if you were asking me, what is the LexJet biggest advantage? I work with Sean and his team, and Pete does as well. And, we're always working together to make sure that, everything they offer you is the highest possible quality. And frankly, they do it as good as or better than anybody.
Yeah, big shout out to Clementi and Kane and Alex. Those guys are rock stars.
You really are.
Thank you guys for that. They work hard trying to support, our customer base and also, the Canon printer line. And I think they do a pretty good job. So thank you.
They really do.